So musicians steal things. We steal ideas, we steal phrases, we steal stylistic choices. I've done this for years. In fact, a lot of what makes up who I am as a player, I stole from other guitar players. Maybe stole is too strong of a word. I appropriated, acquired, I stole them. Now, I don't think this is inherently a bad thing, because this is how musicians learn. This is how music progresses. You take one idea, implement it into your own playing, and because you are an individual, you are a unique player, it inherently evolves and over time becomes your thing. Now, I do this a lot with chords. I love chords. I love figuring out new ways to play chords and finding new chord voicings. Honestly, chords are one of my favorite things about playing guitar. And so today, I'm going to make a video about 5 chord ideas that I stole from other guitar players, and I think you should too. And these are ideas that if you've been around this channel for a while and are familiar with how I play guitar, you might recognize in my playing. These are things that I genuinely use all the time. So today, 5 chord ideas I stole, and I think you should too. If you're interested, there's a PDF download for free in the description box below. That is a diagram of the different chord shapes that I'll be talking about in today's video, so you can follow along at home. And be sure to subscribe down there if you haven't done so already. With all that out of the way, let's jump into the first chord idea. So this first chord idea is a relatively new one for me, and I got it from watching Tom Bukovac on YouTube. Now, if you don't know who Tom is, I've talked about him on my channel before, but he is a Nashville session guitarist, actually one of the premier Nashville session players of the last 15 years or so. And over the course of this pandemic, he started making videos on YouTube. And if you haven't seen them yet, I would highly recommend them. They're a huge wealth of knowledge for the entire guitar community, and I've learned a ton from watching him, including this particular chord idea. Now, I have to admit, this one was so simple that I'm a little embarrassed that I've never seen or thought to do this before. I've never played a major chord this way. Now, before we look at Tom's chord, let's take a look at your typical B major chord voicing with a 5th string root. I've got my first finger on the 5th string 2nd fret here. This is B. That's the root of our chord. And then I bar with my 3rd finger on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th string 4th fret. Simple B major triad we all know and love. But the way Tom voiced it was like this. It's the same chord, the same voicing. He just simply moved the root note from the 5th string to the 6th string. Now you might be thinking, why is that a big deal and why are you freaking out so much about it? Here's why. It completely changes your hand position on the neck, and it allows you to outline the chord much more easily with a major pentatonic line or an Ionian line, something like that. Just by moving from this position to this position, it opened up some new ideas and new ways to play around the chords that I wouldn't normally be able to do. It helped break out of my muscle memory that my left hand has developed of going to the same major chord shape over and over again. It's just much more efficient. If you're going to outline your major chord from this position, you have to move your entire hand up a whole step to get into that major pentatonic box. Versus putting your hand here, you're automatically in the position. And then from there, you can even go to the 4 chord without moving at all. Now I realize there's probably a group of you in the comments that are thinking, how did he not know that? That's so simple. And you're right. I should have figured this out years ago. But This is a really great chord idea that you absolutely should steal and start using in your own playing. So this next chord idea I stole when I was about 15 years old and first learning how to play Little Wing by Jimi Hendrix. Now, if you're new to intermediate player, I highly recommend you check out the intro to Little Wing and the whole song really. Learn how to play the chord progression, learn how to play through and over the chord progression. It's an incredibly useful song to learn when you're first starting out. But there's this quick chord change that happens at the end of the Little Wing intro that I really locked onto, and I still use this chord voicing today, and it's this. It may look complicated, but it's actually incredibly simple. That's just a power chord with an extra note added on top. But I use this all the time because in the context of a mix or playing with a band on stage, this chord voicing really cuts through the mix and sits in with the rest of the band really well. Now you could call this a major 9 chord. So if we were playing here on G, you could call this a G major 9, but the trick is there's no third. There's no major third in this chord. It's just root, 5th, and 9th. And here's how to play it. I like wrapping my thumb over the top of the neck like Jimmy did to grab the root note, which in this case is going to be G. And then I'm going to play the next G octave up with my 3rd finger. Now here's the key with this chord in particular. It's all about muting. So I'm not going to play the 5th string at all. I'm going to mute it. And I'm going to do that one of 2 ways. Either with the edge of my thumb reaching over and touching the 5th string, or with the tip of my 3rd finger. As I'm fretting this G here on the 4th string, 5th fret, the tip of my 3rd finger is touching the 5th string, allowing me to play the note on the 4th string while muting the 5th string. Now, if you're a beginner player, muting is a really crucial skill, and this is a good chord to help you practice with that. We're also going to mute the 3rd string, and I'm going to do that with the pad of my 3rd finger, the fleshy part of my 3rd finger, just by resting the 3rd finger on top of the string. So I should have this. Then I'm going to take my 1st finger and place it on the 3rd fret 2nd string. That gives me D. That's the 5th note of this chord. So far I have G, G, and D, and that's just a power chord. But what makes this chord special and helps it cut through the mix is this A note on top that I'm going to play with my 4th finger on the 5th fret of the 1st string. When I put that note on top of this chord, it really cuts through. And I think that's part of the reason Jimmy played this voicing at the end of the song. There's an intensity and a brightness to it. Now what's cool about this voicing is you can play it in any key. As long as you're on a 6th string root, you can play it anywhere. So that chord voicing gives you a lot of bang for your buck. It sounds cool, it helps you cut through in a mix, and it's pretty simple to play. Now this next chord comes from one of my favorite guitar players out there today, and that is Mark Lettieri. If you don't know who Mark is, you should check him out. He's an insane guitar player. He's played with Snarky Puppy, the Fearless Flyers, his own solo stuff. He's incredibly good. And I actually got this from one of his video courses that I bought a few months ago. I think it's the True Fire course. I'll have it linked down below. And I should point out that I do have Mark's permission to talk about this particular chord because it comes directly from one of his lessons in that video course. Now, this is a really common chord, especially with keys players, but I like the way Mark approaches it. He calls it the 2 chord. And essentially, it's a suspended second. So we're going to take the key of A again here, and I'm going to start with just an A major triad. Now, I like playing with my thumb over the top like we did earlier, but you could play it like this too, your typical bar chord shape. And it's a pretty straight ahead, kind of boring voicing. But Mark's 2 chord, or the sus2 chord, is played like this. you can even add the major 7th on top for a little extra sauce. Now, I love this chord because it's something you can quickly go to immediately add some extra color to something that you might already be playing. Now, essentially, all I'm doing is taking an A major triad here, and I'm gonna flip my first and second finger around, so now I have this. And essentially all I'm doing is going up the scale diatonically. So root, second, or 9, and 5. So instead of 1, 3, 5 like a normal triad, we have 1, 2, 5. And since we're omitting the third in favor of the second, this would make a suspension. Just like if you took the third and raised it a half step to the 4, we'd call that a suspended fourth. Since we're omitting the third in favor of the second, we call it a suspended second. Now, one thing I love to do with this type of voicing is move the root notes around underneath it. And this is something that Mark actually talks about in his video course as well. If I take this G sus2 chord and put an E underneath it, now I have an E minor voicing. Those are beautiful chords, especially for a lot of you worship players or people that like a little bit more of that maybe R&B or gospel kind of sound. That chord voicing works incredibly well over plenty of different chord progressions. Now, this particular chord I stole directly from Rick Beato. I ripped it off from one of his videos he put up a few months ago. And when I talked to him this morning on the phone and asked him about this chord, he told me that he ripped it off directly from Allan Holdsworth. And that's kind of the point of this video. When you steal ideas from somebody or you rip off chords or licks or melody, more than likely that player that you're pulling that idea from got it from somewhere else. In Rick's case, he got it from Allan Holdsworth, and now it's making its way to me and hopefully to you through this video. That's beautiful. And I've added some extra plate reverb from the aux to make it a little bit more ethereal sounding. Now to play this, we're gonna start with the open A string, the 5th string ringing out, and we're gonna follow that with our second finger on the 4th string 2nd fret. That's the note E. That's just a root and 5th. Then we're gonna add the note B with our 4th finger on the 3rd string 4th fret. Always hard to say. Then we're gonna add C with our 1st finger. It's gonna be 1st fret 2nd string. And then I'm gonna throw G on top with my 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Now to me, the beauty of this chord is right here. It's in that minor 2nd interval between the B and the C. Those two notes are exactly a half step apart, which makes them incredibly dissonant. But in the context of this whole chord, it adds a nice tension and sort of beauty that's not there in a typical A minor triad or 7th chord. The other cool thing about this type of chord voicing is you can put different root notes on top of it and make a really cool chord progression. To me, that's a pretty expensive sounding chord, but it's actually pretty simple to play. Now this chord I stole from John Mayer, and it comes from one of his early records from a song called St. Patrick's Day. And it's an E major 7 voicing, and it goes like this. Now this is a really simple chord to play, and since we're in the key of E, we're going to be utilizing the open B and E string on the bottom to give us that nice droning kind of sound. Basically, I'm going to start with my second finger on E. That's the 5th string, 7th fret. Then I'm going to play a major third underneath that with my first finger on the 6th fret, 4th string. And then I'm going to play a major 7th with either my 3rd finger or my pinky, whichever one is more comfortable for you. And again, since we're in the key of E, I can play all 6 strings ringing open. Now I can play the same voicing on the 4th string root down here. And what's cool about this is I can slide my positioning up and make it an E minor chord. Just by taking the same shape and sliding it so my second finger lands on the 5th fret, that now becomes a minor third instead of a major third, and I get this. But you can take that same shape and experiment in different keys and find different voicings moving up and down the neck. It's a really useful chord shape. So those are 5 chord ideas and voicings that I stole, and I think you should too. Let me know what you thought about today's video in the comment section down below. Do you know these chord voicings already, or are they new to you? And if you already knew them, where did you get them from? Because more than likely you got them from another player, just like I did. Also, be sure to check out my tone course, which is linked down below as well. It's a video course that I wish I had had access to when I was first starting out as a guitar player and first starting to gig. It's everything I know about getting great guitar tone and how to set up amps and guitars and pedals and effects. It's all linked down below. You can also find my Helix presets, my new IR packs that I just released, as well as my Kemper presets, and you can sign up for the green room, which is linked down below as well. Thank you as always for watching. I really appreciate the support. Hope you enjoyed today's video. I'm Rhett Shull, and remember, there is no plan B.